Peace, 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 everybody. This is AD. Welcome to the People's Enrichment Program. I know I'm extremely late, but nonetheless, I'm here today. Let me move these chairs so y'all can kind of see us. But darn it, excuse me. Alright, so I know I'm extremely late, but nonetheless, I had a lot of prepping to do. Anyway, why am I saying I'm late? Time is just what it is. I know I ain't trying to make no excuses, but time is just existence. It's what it is. But anyway, before we even get started, I want to thank all the great people that I learned from, historical-wise, from Dr. John Henry Clark to Dr. James Smalls, from Dr. Claude Anderson, from Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, from Dr. Asa G. Hillard, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson. All these great scholars I have to pay homage to, because if it wasn't for them, or Anthony Browder, which is a text I'm going to be using actually today to kind of cover up a lot of what we're talking about. Who else? Dr. Joy DeGrew. Just a whole lot of countless scholars that have given us great history about our people, ranging from Kemet to slavery to everything that we've achieved and experienced in life. So I do have to pay homage to the elders and the ancestors that have transcended. So I do want to say that. And before we, you know how we do, before we get started into the lesson, we start off with an African proverb. We talk about that briefly, and then today we're going to go into the early Dynasty period of Kemet. And later on, I had discovered some other findings, and I want to go further in of the Europeanization of Kemet as well. I know I talked about it briefly when we talked about it in the Hellenistic period in the previous lesson, in the Greek period, which is the same era too, in the Byzantine Empire and all of that. So we're going to actually go further into that. I gave you some brief history on them, but we're going to go further into that later in another lesson. But to kickstart, you know how we do. We're going to start off with the African proverb that reads as stated. It says, an old lion who was too weak to hunt for food decided that he must get it by wits. He went down in a cave pretending to be ill, and whenever any animals came to visit him, he seized them and ate them. When many had perished in this way, a fox who seen through the trick and stood from the cave and inquired how the lion was. Bad, the lion answered, and asked the fox, why did he not come in? Excuse me. I would have come in, said the fox, but I saw a lot of tracks going in, but none coming out. So we want to say the moral of that story is pretty self-explanatory, but if you don't get it, if you see, you always have to be observant. So the fox himself was looking from the outside and observing the lion's behavior. You know, the fox in most folklore or fairy or tales is considered to be cunning. So he saw the tricks that the lion was playing against his prey. So just be aware of your surroundings, the moral of the story. And when you know there's danger, you need to keep your distance and and stay away, and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you're always aware of your surroundings. Because at the end he says, but I saw a lot of tracks going in, but saw none coming out. So he knew something was going on with those animals because they did not return out of the cave once they went inside with the lion. And then you even see with the lion himself that, he had to use the art of war. He had to pretend he had to lure the animals in by trickery, letting them know, getting them in, pretending to be ill, so that way he can get his prey, because he was too old and he was too weak. But anyway, that is the African proverb of today. Now we want to get into the early Dynasty period. We already talked about in my previous lesson that Menes, aka Neymar, is the founder of Upper Kemet and Lower Kemet. I'm going to show you some maps here in a moment, so just give me one moment to do that. But I want to start off by saying again that period, the rough estimate period is 3,200 BC to 2570 BC. That's the rough estimated period. Now you got to remember, when we dealing with these time periods, the further and further back you go back in time, the more skeptic the time is, because you can't really know, and we're all going by speculation. Remember, all history is a lie. We just do our best, well, at least some of us do our best to tell the truth as much as possible. We got to think about the languages that we don't speak anymore. We got to think about putting ourselves actually in that experience of our ancestors. So we do our best according to what we have that's in front of us, based off of anthropology, just fossils, different things that you see amongst early histories. And so we use a lot of that, and we try to come up with explanations and everything to explain the time periods. But anyway, I'm going to show you that Kemet, the Nile River, because I didn't show you last time that it's 4,000 miles. So this 4,000 miles of the Nile River covered over 7 million acres of land in Kemet. So it covered millions and millions of acres of Kemet. So that Nile River was very, very significant, as I want to reiterate. But let me show you in Anthony Browder's book, the Nile in comparison to all the other rivers. I want to show you something. These are the major rivers in the world right here. These are all the major rivers. And now, to this day, it's still considered to be the biggest river of them all, So I'm just gonna name off a few rivers. Okay, the one that comes close is the Amazon River right here. That's 4,000 miles. But even then, like I said, the Nile River, to be exact, is 4,145 miles. The smallest river I see down here is Thames, and that's 200 miles, and that's down here up there, okay? So it's so many different rivers that we see down here. The Yangtze is 3,400 miles. Du Huang is 3,000 miles. Lena is 2,680 miles. Just to give you a comparison of the Nile River and the significance of it in comparison to the other rivers. Like I said, the one that kind of comes close is the Amazon River, which is about 4,000 miles. But the Nile River still has it at least over 100 miles of river. So it has it ahead of that. So moving on, I want to also talk about as well that Kemet, of course, inspired many other religions such as Islam, Christianity, Kabbalism, and Hinduism. Because remember, Jesus didn't come till later on, and he came thousands and thousands of years ahead. You know, this is the pre-Christian era. We talking about pre-Islam era, Kabbalism and Hinduism. They came later on down the line. So we know, as I mentioned before, slaves didn't exist. The Bible argues that slavery existed in Egypt, but in fact that isn't true. You go into the Bible and you see that Moses tried to get the Pharaoh to relinquish the Israelites and all of that stuff, but that did not happen. I'm going to actually read you something else from the Kemetic Tree of Life that actually comes before Moses was even thought of. So let me actually get that excerpt as well for you so you can see that too. I'm going to read this excerpt for you, and then we're going to go into the lesson even deeper. So let me read this for you real quick. So this is an ancient Kemet parable that illustrates some important aspects of this teaching related to the cosmic forces and their control. So this is the Kemetic Tree of Life by Dr. Muata Ashby, who is an African, I don't even like to use the word Egyptologist because that's a European term, but he studies in the field of Kemet. So let's put it in that way. So, all right, let's get into the story. So remember, this came before Moses parted the Red Sea. So let's hear it. This is a Kemetic story of the Old Kingdom period, the most ancient period of the dynastic era. Okay? There was once a story about a king who was bored. He had a harem, and one of his ladies said, why don't you take a boat ride, and we'll play some music for you as we sail down on the Nile, and we will have a great time. He said, excellent idea, let's go. So they went down the Nile, and all the ladies were playing music, and they were relaxed, and it was unbelievably calm. If you go to, he says Egypt, but I'm going to say Kemet. If you go to Kemet, you can see it happening. You can sail just as they used in ancient times. Now, all of a sudden, one of the ladies stopped rowing, and then the rest of them stopped rowing. The king asked, what's going on? Why have we stopped? And the lady said, I lost a great jewel that you have given me. It fell overboard. I don't see it. I don't know what happened to it. Then the king called one of his ministers, a priest, to see if he could do anything about this problem. He said to the minister, one of my wives has lost a jewel that I gave her, and she's very upset. And all the ladies were very upset, and they have stopped rolling, and my wonderful day has turned into a nightmare. Can you do anything? So the minister said, I'll do the best that I can. Then he goes and looks overboard, and then he utters some words of power. And all of a sudden, the Nile River stopped flowing. Furthermore, the water started to part from the middle. Water from one side of the river rose up and went on the top of the other side. There was a parting of the Nile. And so the priest got out and started walking on the bottom of the Nile, and he saw the jewel where it had fallen. And he went and picked it up and returned to the boat. The priest uttered some words, and the waters came back into the Nile again, and they started flowing down the river. And the lady started rowing, and everything was fine from then on. And this story, of course, comes thousands of years before the parting of the seas in the Bible myth of Exodus. Okay? So I just wanted to read you that so you can get an idea of a story that happened many centuries before Moses was even thought of. Moses, there still isn't no archaeological evidence to show Moses even ever existed. So let's even throw that out there on the table. Now, I do want to show you some terms for the word Pharaoh. I know we went over that term briefly, but according to Anthony Browder, he said Pharaoh is a Greek term, so we use the term Ingo or Ngu, excuse me. It's spelled N-G-U, N-G-U. So that was the Kemetic term before Pharaoh, okay? And then we know Pharaoh means a great house. So that term again is Ngu, or it may be just Gu. The N may be silent, so it may be just Gu, but it's spelled N-G-U, all right? But I do want to show you some depictions of the term Pharaoh right here. This is that right there, if you can see it, right there is the symbol or the pictograph of Pharaoh. And then even that word Pharaoh, you see the word per-ah. It's per-ah. That's how you see, that's what you see down there. And then looking at the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, that is Nes-Bidi. You see that right here? It's right there. That's the depiction right there. And that's stood for, like I said, the king of the Upper and Lower Egypt. And it says here down at the bottom that it was an instrument for threshing grain, consisting of a staff or a handle to one end of which is attached 3 freely swinging sticks or bars. Flagellum, excuse me. Winnowing tool flail from flagellum whip. Grain husk separated from the seed during threshing. Okay, so that's what that is for when you talk about the king of Upper and Lower Egypt. These are pictographs at the bottom that he shows. All right, so I just wanted to show you guys that. And as you know as well, many of the structures that stand in Kemet today are well over 6,000 years old. So we're going to also talk about that too. So let me actually switch this up so y'all can see what I see on my board over here. So let me show y'all this. I know y'all probably can't see everything, but we're going to make it do what it do. Alright, so let me grab the stick. I'm going to show y'all some maps too. So give me one moment to show y'all. But let me get into Menez. I know I talked about him briefly before. I'm going to show you a depiction of him, a statue depiction of in Anthony Browder's book called Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. So let me show you that first before I actually get into that. So give me one moment, because we do have a lot of depictions I want to show. And just give me one moment. And I'm gonna show you some more depictions of the unification of Upper and Lower Kemet. Actually, let me just show you right now. So you see that depiction? This is Happy unifying the two lands of Upper and Lower Kemet. That's an actual depiction. This is an actual depiction right here. Okay? So I just wanted to show you that. And here he is right here. They got his name, King Narmer, known as Aha or Hor-Aha. Now, I do want to, I know that's kind of, you can't really see it. Well, yeah, you can. Okay, so that is him right there. All right. Little is known about his life, but nonetheless, people still consider him the founder of Kemet. And now I want to say this. Now there is some speculative thing going on about Menes, and we know Menes and Narmer are the same. But Hor-Aha, some historians argue that he may have been, that may be the same person. But then other historians argue, which is widely accepted, that Hor-Aha is different. So it's really unknown if really Menes or aka Narmer is Hor-Aha, or Menes had a son named Hor-Aha. But regardless, we know that because of the time periods, that's why the speculation is crazy. But Anthony Browder is arguing that it's the same. He's the same person because he's using his name interchangeably. All right, but regardless, we know that he constructed a massive mastaba. So this is the earliest tomb of pharaohs. Remember, I'm going to be using the term Ngo, because Ngo or Ngu, is the term or Kemetic term before pharaoh. Okay, so Ngu or Gu, or it's going to be the term I'm going to be typically trying to use. All right, so that's what I wanted to say about that. But the mastabas, those were flat. They were flat and they were very typically massive. You had to go from the top. They had a top entrance, so you have to go from the top on down in. Okay, and then they had underground chambers too. Okay, okay. So picture this. It's a square. Okay, and then within that square, you have different spots in there. So typically, the Ngus were buried in the middle, while the family members were buried within the outskirts of the square. So he would be in the middle, and then the family members would be buried. And a lot of times when they were buried, of course, grave robbers came and all of that crazy stuff too. So imagine all the history that's been lost and all of that due to grave robbers, okay, throughout the centuries. But nonetheless, they believed that the remains would be secured, and of course they were secured to some degree. But nonetheless, also it would help them being buried down, really down, would help them in the astral plane known as Pet. That's another Kemetic term. Pet is considered the astral plane or the universal plane or spiritual plane that once our ancestors ascended, that's where they believe they went. All right. So that is something that I wanted to say. Now, Nephhotep is one of the first women we can give name in history. However, her birth is unknown. Okay, but we do know that there's some type of relation between Menes and Nephhotep. Okay, all right. So the dates, or actually, I want to show you something in a dictionary of Egyptian gods and goddesses of her, and then I'm gonna show you guys a map here in a minute. So give me one moment with that. So give me one moment. Okay. All right. Okay. So now I'm gonna read you an excerpt from here. Okay. This is of Nephhotep. Is one I said she's one of the first women we can give a name in history in Kemet, according to Kemet. Of course, we know the oldest being came from Ethiopia. It was a girl. The scientists and archaeologists and anthropologists gave her the term Lucy, but she's over 3 million years old. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the time period of Kemet, of the dynasty period, the early dynasty. We're not talking about Ethiopia. So I know I'm not saying that this is the first woman in history. I'm not saying that. All right. I just want y'all to know that we already know the first woman in history came in Ethiopia. That's not you know what I'm trying to say. It's not that's widely known. You know what I'm saying? Whether many scholars want to acknowledge it or not, that is known. Okay, National Geographic came out about that, and many other scholars have talked about that, about she being the oldest. But we're just talking about Neith being the first woman in Kemet history in the dynasty, the early dynasty period. All right. So I'm gonna read you about the goddess Neith. Okay. All right. So Neith, creator goddess of Sais. The goddess's name has been derived from the word meaning that which is. Okay. So we got Neith meaning which is. Okay. While not totally convincing, suits her procreative, aspect and seems preferable to the etymology which give it the sense the terrifying. The goddess does not have an undeniable bellicose side to her nature. Does have an undeniable bellicose side to her nature, but it has been greatly overstated. Her most ancient symbol in the shield, which crossed arrows, which occurs in the early dynastic period. Okay, so we're talking about the early dynastic period right now. Engraved and inlaid in blue paste on gold omelet in the shape of a cockroach from a first dynasty tomb of or at Naga Ed-Yer. This warlike emblem is reflected in her titles: Mistress of Bow, Rulers of Arrow. The hieroglyph writing her name comprises 2 bows bound in a package. The warrior image behind these symbols led to the Greek identification of Neith with Athens. In iconographical, the goddess is represented as Lady, watch this, wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. Okay? The earliest occurrence of Neith in the northern crown comes from the Sun Temple of King Userkaf, Dynasty 5, I believe that says 5, at Abu Jarod. Historically, it was the Delta which in, here's the time, 3000 B.C. succumbed to the onslaught of the ruler of the south, becoming incorporated with the upper Egypt into one unified state. The northern goddess, Neith, whose home western delta, whose town was Sais, modern Sa El Hagar in the western delta, was one of the most prominent deities of the conquered kingdom. It seems a plausible suggestion, therefore, that an early ruler of the first dynasty, here it comes, Hor-Aha, which is Menaz, or could be argued that is Menaz, founded a temple to Neith at Sais, possessing the political foresight to placate the defeated northerners by a gesture, a goodwill towards their goddess, in addition to the crown of Sais and the town's palace emblem of the bee, Both become symbols of immense. I showed you that B earlier in the Kemetic tree of life, according to Dr. Muata Ashby. So he's talking about the same thing. All right, that's why I'm reading this. All right, the B became symbols of immense importance of the monarchy of dynastic Egypt. By the Old Kingdom, at the least latest, Nith was a integral element of the state pantheon, which is with a sanctuary at Memphis. There, by analogy with the host deity Ptah, south of the wall. I'm gonna show you another depiction here in a minute. By analogy, by analogy with the host deity Ptah, south of the wall, she was termed as being north of her wall. In the Roman period, inscriptions were carved on the columns of the temple of Esna in Upper Egypt, attempting to give Neth, a goddess of impeccable, northern credentials, southern origins. Remember, a lot of Kemetians acknowledge themselves as being the children of the South, okay? So they knew where they came from. They came from Nubia, okay? So we got that clear. I talked about that in the previous lesson as well. So it is important, however, because it stresses the dominant feature of Nith, which is her role as creator, according to the Esna cosmology. The goddess emerged from waters to create the world. She then follows the flow of the Nile northward to found Saias in company with the subsequently venerated latest fish. There was much earlier references to Neth's association with the primordial floods, and to her as the Demerge Amenhotep II. We know, I didn't say this, but Amenhotep I ruled in Sudan. He did. But we're talking about Amenhotep II, which is a later dynasty. And one inscription is the pharaoh who's being Neth molded. The papyrus, giving the account of the struggle between Horus and Seth, Mrs. Neth, who illuminated the first face. In the 6th century B.C., the goddess is said to have invented birth. This above papyrus relates a brief passage that brings Neth into the struggle over the throne of Egypt as a wise counselor. Ben Nepajad urges Re to seek the advice of Neth, the great to solve the 80 years dispute. Neth's advice, which is the course eventually but not immediately adopted, is to award the throne to Horus. Also to compensate Seth by giving him the goddess Astarte and Net as his wives. Aggressively, Neth threatens in her letter to court that if Horus does not win, she will grow angry and the sky will crash to the earth. All right, I'm going to read this last bit of this, and then we're going to continue on. By the Pyramid era, Neth was regarded as the consort of Seth and the mother of Sobek. In this role, aptly described as nurse of crocodiles, this concept of Neth is as divine mother extends to other deities such as Isis and even the sun god Re himself. In this aspect, she necessarily transforms into a sky goddess with the title of Great Cow, in complete contradiction to her maternal relationship to Re. Late inscriptions in the Esna temple call the goddess mother of serpent Apophis, arch enemy of the sun god, ascribing his birth to the saliva spat out of Neth into the water. All right, so that is the summary of her. I wanted to read that so to give you an idea of why she was the earliest woman. And usually, like I told you, when pharaohs and, I don't like to say pharaohs, when kings or queens died, a lot of them had inscriptions of of the god or the goddesses that they were. You know what I'm saying? So that shows you, because her early name Neth, that's the name Neth, and then Hotep. So she had to be one of the first women to be named. I would argue that. But as I said, there isn't no time. There's no time on her birth. But nonetheless, that she is still considered to be the first woman that can give name, that we can give a name in history. All right. So moving on, we can talk about the time periods of the rulers. Or no, we're not gonna get into that yet. We're gonna hold out on that. I want to also talk about. I want to preface a little bit. I know I've been speaking about rulership with Menez. We're going to go into further more rulership when we're talking about more kings and stuff. I got a list of kings we're going to talk about. All right, so I want to say this because a lot of people get things misconstrued. In this, we study this history because we acknowledge that there's only one race, which is the human race. And that human race originates in Africa. Now, I know a lot of people consider, I know Sudan and Ethiopia and Tanzania are considered to be the earliest parts of Africa that were developed. And Ethiopia, that term actually means sunburnt face. So that's a term according to Dr. Anthony Browder. He uses that in his book. Okay, so early archaeologists such as Dr. Louis B. Leakey, he is an author and paleontologist, which is a person that studies geological evidence according to fossils. And also I want to talk about that. So he did write a book that goes over the origins of Africa. So you can look up his book. I haven't read it personally, but nonetheless, you can look up the information. This is all according to Anthony Browder. He said that in his book. Okay? All right? So writing to this day is often taken for granted. But the alphabet, the pen, the ink all begin in Africa, as we all talked about. I'm going to show you here now some depictions of the earliest alphabet that you can see here before all the different people that raided Africa, okay? So this here is the Kemetic time period. It's 32 BCE. And then there's Semitic, which is 1500 BCE. Phoenician, 1000 BCE. Greek, 600 BCE. And then Roman, 114 ACE. So this is the timeline right here. All right, a lot of scholars will argue too that the Sumerians, that they started the alphabet in the early writings. Well, I would say if they did, I would argue against that, only because if anything, their time period, it was around 2000 BCE. It wasn't no later than 2000 BCE. So how could they have started the writing system when Sudan, of course, was the earliest, but wasn't the most sophisticated as Kemet? But that is the founding part of how Kemet got started, because like I said, a lot of the Sudanese people migrated to Kemet. All right, so these are different depictions here. You see the ox's head, you see the house, you see the boomerang, you see the door, you see man shouting, you see the hook, you see the another boomerang, a twisted rope, a hand, cupped hand, a staff, and water. And a lot of this stuff comes here, and you get it all the way over here, and you see the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F. See, all this stuff came from Kemet. All right. So, and even in the Greek, you see alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, gamma, eta. You see iota, kappa. All those are Greeks. Okay, that's Greek philosophy, not African. Greek. All right, you hear any of those terms, it's Greek stuff. All right, don't let nobody fool you to think that that's anything beyond Greek. Okay, all right. So, and then you can go over here on this side. You see the snake, or you see the snake, the eye, the mouth, the monkey, the head, and this is Kemet still. All right, this is a different time line. All right, and that's the head, that's the tusk, check mark, the hook, the fish, the hook again, and the arrow, and you see the same parallels moving forward from the Semitic, Phoenician, Greek, and Roman. Okay, I just wanted to show y'all that. All right. So this is the evidence right here. All right, we're not gonna play no games with the European revisionists because they want to argue that Comections were dark-skinned whites. That's like saying a baby gave birth to itself, and then after it gave birth to itself, it gave birth to its mama. Now, how does that make any sense? That Comections were dark-skinned whites. Like I said, use that analogy that I just said. Go back in time in this video and listen to what I said again to hear what I said. Because that's ridiculous. You already know that's ridiculous. I'm going to show you some early depictions actually right now of our people. Hold on. Let me actually show you. Because y'all think I'm playing with y'all today. I ain't about to play with y'all today. I am not about to play with y'all today. So hold on. All right. So here's a Nubian right here. Of course, this is a later period of Nubia. All right. This is not early dynasty. Maybe a little bit after the early dynasty. But this is a drawing of a Nubian. Okay. Of the tomb of King Seti I. All right. And this time period was 1291 BCE to 1279 BCE. All right, that's one depiction, but there was another depiction that I wanted to actually show y'all of our people. Okay, here they are right here. All right. So that's a Kemetic person right here. All right. That's an Indo-European. That's, of course, during the invasion, during the Greek invasion and all of that. Or you would call them Greco-Romans or Greco-Egyptians. Some people say that too. Here goes a Nubian right there. That's a Nubian. Okay, we know that Nubia is older than Kemet, so these people migrated to Kemet. And then here goes the Semites. This is the Arabs. They also were the invaders as well. Okay, so we talked about that in the Ottoman domination and the Caliphate and Mamelukes, all of them. These are the Semitic people, which aka the Arabs. All right, so that's the depictions, okay? You're not going to play no games with y'all, all these people lying about what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to show y'all that. But let me go back into this, okay? So, now, I already talked about how most modern-day 19th century Europeans tried to say that Comections were dark-skinned whites. So, with that being said, I also want to add this. A lot of them argue as well that the Greeks were responsible for creating, or Europeans in general were responsible for creating African dynasties and all of that. Well, if that is the case, how come they didn't go back to Greek and do the same thing? You know what I'm saying? How come prior to coming to Africa, their place wasn't made in the same fashion? You know what I'm saying? So I would say that too. You know what I'm saying? So that can't be argued that they started Africa, because that's not true. You know what I'm saying? Go back to the baby analogy, okay? Remember that baby analogy. All right. So there's ancient Greek historians such as Homer. I put home by accident, but Homer, Plutarch, Herodotus, which his time period was 484 BCE to 425 BCE, Diodorus and Montello, they argue even otherwise. How come these early Greek historians argue that, you know what I'm saying, that they saw Africans and they described them in great detail? I want to also read some of that as well. You know what I'm saying? Because there's some okay, hold on real quick. Okay. All right. So look, I'm gonna read you something from Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. So here it says, the practice of dividing the many kingdoms of Kemet into dynastic periods was first established by Greco-Egyptian priest named Montello, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Montello, excuse me. Yeah, that is right. During the 3rd century B.C.E., Montello was commissioned by Ptolemy Philadelphus to write the definitive history of the country, which he subsequently chronicled in a book entitled History of Egypt. Regrettably, much of this history was lost when the Library of Alexandria was destroyed. However, the remaining fragments of Montello chronology provides us with some clues to the names of early rulers. Okay, so there is general disagreement among modern Egyptologists and other historians regarding the exact dates of the dynastic periods. Some historians have recorded the establishment of the first dynasty as being as early as the 5th millennial BCE, and other document it as beginning as the 3rd millennial BCE. While most historians have adopted the conservative date of 3150 BCE as the beginning of the first dynasty, new data is continued to surface, which tends to support earlier dates for the establishment of the first dynasty in Kemet. So, like I said before, these dates, as you go further back in time, they are less certain because it's always going to be debates about that. But let's move on and go back onto the time period of the rulers, okay? So then, who is I take that back. I'm reading at the wrong board. So let's go to this part of the board here, which is the next part, okay? Now, Jared was a ruler during the time period of 3073 BCE up until 3036 BCE. So he reigned for 41 years, and he is considered to be the third pharaoh or the third Engu. All right. Little is known about his life, but he is the father of Jet. Okay. So the Jet is the fourth pharaoh or the fourth Engu, and little is known about him as well. All right, but his time period is a rough estimate of 3008 BCE up to 2975 BCE. All right, now beside from his father ruled for about 41 years. We know that much. Now, what is Jet, his son, is most famous for is the slab of tomb of Horus with the serpent on it. Okay, so that is also the meaning of his name, okay? So I want to show you that along with the maps that I told you I wanted to show you. So I can't, well, not show you this, because I don't actually have that. But I do want to show you that depiction that I said I was going to show you earlier. So let me show you that really quick so we can, so you can see what I'm talking about. Because we was talking about Neth. I want to show you that depiction because I meant to show you that. I didn't even show it to you. So let me show you that now. Because that's the establishment. It's symbolic of the establishment of northern and southern Egypt. So let me show you that real quick. All right. So yes, this is it right here. This is what I was supposed to show you. Okay. So this is Neth is on the right, and the opposite side is Serket, okay? And at this Serket, this is the theogony of Amen and Queen Metu Mawai. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this is the temple of Amenhotep III, which is at the Luxor. So this is a depiction right here, or a diaphragm of that. And remember, this is symbolic to the unification of the upper and lower Egypt, okay? Because prior to that, there was autonomous cities scattered around that most of Comections lived around. So they were just scattered around, and that's how they lived. But we do know Abydos, which was mostly where all the pharaohs or Engus were buried at, okay? It wasn't until after the unification where Memphis became more of a great capital for everything, for Kemet, okay? Now going back to the next part of the time period. So after Jet, okay, we go to Din. Okay, so Din, let's go back, let's bring this back over here. Okay. Excuse me, nope, drop that. So Din, okay, might have ruled alongside his mother, which mirrored death. There's another word, there's that word again, Neth, okay? So Mereneth is considered to be the first woman pharaoh, okay? She might have, like I said, she was the mother of Din, okay? And she is considered the first woman pharaoh, all right? So with that being said, let's move on to the next part. Now, Enedjeb reigned for 10 years around 2930 BCE. I want to say this with Din. Din, there's not much known about his life as well, except that he could have ruled alongside his mother. But she, like I said, is considered the first woman pharaoh. All right? Now, Enedjeb reigned for 10 years around 300 BCE. Now, there is speculative evidence to show that could have been some conflict during his reign of rulership due to the fact that there are some early vessels that mark off that makes the attempts to mark off Nedjeb's name. But nonetheless, the guy that may have been in conflict with him, Summer Ket, his name is not on the tablet of Saqqara, okay? His name is not on that. All right, so I guess you could say that speculation is not really, it's really obsolete, because Nedjeb's name is on the tablet versus his name, because his name is just it's attempted to be scratched off, okay? So that is what I wanted to say with that. Let's go on down to the next part, to this part over here. All right, so the next part here. Oh, let me move this chair. Keep dropping the phone, y'all. Excuse me. All right, so this is just like the square I was just describing to you. It's like a rectangle. I said a square. So this is a rectangle. And like I said, imagine that within this rectangle you got squares or maybe smaller rectangles. In the middle of this big rectangle, you can find that most of the pharaohs were buried in the middle, okay? And then within this rectangle, you know that there's burials of the family members, okay? The family members were buried outside of the rectangle within the square, okay? So, as I talked about in the mastabas, most of them were made out of mud, brick, or stone so they could withstand erosion. Now, a lot of the mastabas over the time periods, after thousands and thousands of years, have been buried in the sand. So many archaeologists have to go and you have to uncover all of that stuff. You have to uncover that's buried in the sand, because a lot of scholars considered at that time that area of where they were of the sand, which is like flat, it's just nothing but sand, they considered that area to be of unimportance. Okay, it wasn't really important. But then once they started seeing more and more things, they started becoming more fuel to go over there and uncover stuff, and realize it was a great importance, because this is considered the early dynasty period. Okay, and mastabas were created before the pyramids were created. Okay, so you got to understand that pyramids came a little later. Okay, so they continued to use mastabas for thousands of years. Okay, all right. So with that being said, we already said Memphis was the great capital, which we would consider that to be the north, which is really Lower Kemet. Okay, all right. And then Abydos is the south, which is considered Upper Kemet. All right, we already talked about that. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that the temples, most temples were open air, and they were made out of sandstone. Okay, and a lot of these temples during this early dynasty period weren't just places of residence, but also it was an actual administrative system, okay, where you had governors, visors, the pharaohs, and a lot more different people in the family, in the royal family, that were there to live, okay, and to do administrative work, okay. So you can find many scribes that were kept there to keep track of the goods that were there, okay? And visors were second behind the pharaohs to come in command, okay? They were usually appointed by the royal family, all right? And like I said, the pharaoh could only overpower the visor. That would be the only person that can overpower what the visors will put out. Okay, the technocrats, the bureaucrats, all these different people lived there. Okay, that was the royal family. Okay, and that was their home, but also a place of administrative work. It was their administrative system. Okay, and also when I talk about the last king of the first dynasty, his name was Ka. He was the last king of the first dynasty, and he ruled around 2910 B.C.E. All right, so that's what I wanted to tell you about that. I also want to show you some maps here too, because I didn't show y'all the maps yet. So I want to show y'all some maps of the cities from the different books I have. All right, so here I come with the map. I haven't showed y'all this map from the Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. So this is the map right here of the Nile Valley in Africa, a southern orientation. So this is only showing you oh well, no, actually it's not just showing you just the south, but it's showing you everything that we talked about. Okay, so Ethiopia's up here. Okay, we see Ethiopia. We see the Nile flowing down. Okay, so you see the Nile stretches all the way down. Okay, and then you see Sudan, which is Nubia. Okay, is right here. You see, this is considered right here. This is considered Upper Kemet. And this is the famous city that we talked about where all the kings were usually buried, which is Abydos. Okay, so that is considered Upper Kemet. All right. We also talked about Luxor a little bit in the ancient Egyptian dictionary of gods and goddesses in George Hart's book. Okay. And Memphis is in the low. You see, Memphis is down lower, nearby Cairo. That is considered Lower Kemet. Okay, Lower Kemet, Upper Kemet. This is the south, even though, this is considered the north, even though it says Lower Kemet, and this is considered the south, even though it says Upper Kemet. Okay, I know that's confusing, excuse me, but that is how they looked at it. Okay, all right. So, and this is Tai Seti. Okay, so these are the different cities you get to see down here. All right, you see the Red Sea on the side. Okay, that's the part that we talked about how Moses it's debunked that he didn't depart the Red Sea, and there was actually earlier tales before Moses, which I already read to you, of him departing of our kings and our ancient Kemet stories that show that came before Moses's tale. But anyway, I wanted to show you that. Okay, so let me show you something else here. Let's see. What else? It was something else I wanted to show you. Hold on. No, actually, hold on. It's in the other book I got. I want to show you. All right, so I wanted to go over a term. I want to start doing this with you guys and adding this to the lesson plan too. But I want to start going over Kemetic terms and symbols. But a lot of what we're talking about when it comes to Egypt, it deals with Shiat Neter, which means secrets about the divine self. Okay, so this is a term in the symbols that I wanted to show you of that. Okay, you see the staff, you see the bird, and you see other depictions there with that. And the Shiat Neter means the way or wisdom of the hidden divinity, which is behind all creation. All right, so that's what I wanted to show you. And let me see if I'm not leaving nothing else out that I wanted to show you as well regarding let me see. There's something else. Okay, of course I want to show you this map again. Now I want to give you the terms as well, because I know I've been using a lot of Greek terms. I do my best not to use the Greek terms, but Memphis, remember the Kemet term for Memphis is actually Hecapata. So you could also remember that's what that stands for. And then Heliopolis, Anu, that's the Kemet term for Heliopolis is Anu, okay? And then Thebes down here, which we really didn't talk about today, but it's Waset. That's the term for that. All right, and this is also another map depiction of the main Theurges in ancient Kemet. Okay, we talked about Sas a little bit in George Hart's book. We talked about that, and then here goes Saqqara. Saqqara is right there. Sometimes Saqqara is spelled Sakkara, or sometimes it's spelled Saqqara. All right, so that's pretty much it. All right, hold on. Here's Abydos is right there. It's right there, okay? That's right there. So I just wanted to show y'all that stuff. I hope you guys gained something from this. Please leave comments, like, share, subscribe, because we do this every other Saturday, the second and fourth Saturday. And again, I want to pay homage to the people that came before me that actually helped me learn more about my ancestors and what we did. I know a lot of our history still, we need to fulfill the blanks, and we still need to, know even more. But the purpose, like I told you guys last time, the purpose of the mystery system, if you look at the word mystery, it means my story, okay? So we're sharing our story, but it's divinity within our story, okay? There's math in our story. There's philosophy. There's all sorts of things that we use, cosmology, astronomy, all these different things to get across our story. We use anthropomorphic creatures to, tell our history. You know what I'm saying? So every animal that you see that's attached to a human's body stands for something. You know what I'm saying? It's not just there, So I just wanted to say all of that stuff, and like I said, I hope you guys gain something from this. And I'll be back again. We're going to talk about the Europeanization of Kemet. I already talked about it a little bit, but I want to go even further and dig deep a little bit more of the Hellenistic period and the Roman period, and give y'all some materials that they borrowed from us, or stole. I don't like to use the word borrow, but stole from us, so I can show you the parallels of that. So with that being said, Namaste, Ashe, peace and love, peace and salutations, one love, all the great stuff you want to think about. And I hope everybody's having a good day. Peace.